by the end of the protest, towards the end of those 18 days, they were saying they also wanted Omar Suleiman to go. That's now happened. But that they also wanted to see a narrowing of the inequalities in Egyptian society. They wanted to see proper democracy installed in this country. They wanted to see free and fair elections. And whilst they trust the military, and tonight they're very much celebrating that power is now back in their hands, they will want to hear more about what's going to happen, what the plan of action is. And some of them have said to me tonight that they won't leave Tahrir Square until they get certain promises about the preparations for democracy that are likely to be made over the coming months.
One more question for you there on this point, Melissa. We've seen over the last 18 days the crowd's attitude towards the army evolve. First it was fraternal, then there was a bit wary. Have you seen scenes with what's the relationship like between the soldiers and the demonstrators today?
Well, the first indication that something was up didn't happen in the middle of Tahrir Square. It happened in front of Egyptian television, which is just a block away from where I'm speaking to. As I mentioned to you earlier in the day, huge crowds had made their way to Egyptian television, into the presidential palace. My colleague Virginie Hertz was camped out in front of the television, the Egyptian television rather, to keep an eye on what was happening there while we were in the center of Tahrir Square. And just before that announcement by Omar Suleiman on state television, the first indication that something was up was when military top brass made their way into the building and made V signs to the crowd. Now, no one knew quite how to interpret this, and given all that's gone on in the last 24 hours, journalists and demonstrators were loath to ascribe too much to that gesture. And yet, after that had happened, demonstrators climbed onto the tanks that were positioned outside the television and began fraternizing with the army in a way that hadn't happened. The army had been neutral, but they were on the tanks, sitting up there with them, and there was a sense that something was happening, although no one could quite put their finger on what it was. So it was that was the first indication here in Egypt that something extraordinary was about to happen, was that single gesture from the army to the demonstrators as the military top men made their way into Egyptian television tonight.
All right, stay with us, Melissa Bell, because we've got a lot more to ask you. First, though, I've got to say, Vivian, everyone who's ever held a job has at least once fantasized about a take this job and shove it moment. And you've had the privilege in Cairo, reading in your magazine, of meeting